Hey, Justin. Greetings from Maltego Global Headquarters in Munich.
Well, greetings from humble Boston, Massachusetts. Nice to be speaking with you again. It's nice to continue the conversation that we started a few weeks back with the first webinar. So appreciate you taking the time to connect with us again.
Glad to.
Um, so look, as always, obviously this is being recorded and we want to make sure that any questions that are being asked, certainly feel free to drop them in the chat. But if there are any follow-ups or anything that we can take offline, happy to do so as well. So feel free to share any questions or comments that you have in the chat and we'll address it as they come. The other thing, and this is really just, as someone who's been on the front lines, speaking to customers, talking to a lot of new prospects that are really excited to hear what Maltego is doing next. Since we last spoke, V3, we've gotten some feedback. I guess maybe to open up and just to kind of continue again some of the momentum from our previous conversation, I'd love to hear a little of the feedback maybe that you've gotten from our customers and from users. How is V3 being received?
I've been out to a couple events since our last conversation, and the folks I've sat down and talked with are really excited. The new capabilities of V3, so that's the graph in, the graph out, and the long-running transforms. If you've written a transform before, it kind of instantly becomes apparent exactly what that's trying to do, because it's a very in-depth capability, but it's really fundamental when you're looking at these bigger graphs and the more complex data structures, such as cryptocurrency and things like that, where returning one results related to the one entity you started with isn't enough anymore. We are continuing to evolve our set of V3 capable transforms in the Maltego data hub, and that's continuing to generate more excitement. Actually, I'd be curious what you've heard.
Yeah, I think it's very similar to what you've been hearing, but one of the things that maybe stands out, especially as we're starting conversations with new customers, is kind of talking about the art of the possible, right? And what this allows us to discuss with new customers regarding some use cases and ideas maybe that they didn't even realize were possible within Maltego that are now becoming part of the conversation, helping to drive deeper value. And of course, with our existing customers, just realizing that we're continuing to innovate and continuing to add capabilities that align to how they need to engage with platforms like Maltego now and in the future. I think it's been really encouraging, and certainly we'll be excited to see as those V3 transform capabilities with other integrations that we have continue to be released. I think it's going to be a really positive thing, but all thumbs up so far from the ground floor, I guess. So appreciate all the efforts there.
That's awesome. I should say that this has really been exciting to watch. We've done 2 releases this year. We've got a third one we'll talk about here in a minute, and that's probably even more than just the V3. The notion that Maltego is moving again. We have development, we have engineering resources applied to some of these things that have been gaps and challenges for a long time. Everybody here is just absolutely excited about kind of what's coming next and where we're headed.
Yeah, and I think it also speaks a little bit to not resting on our laurels at all, right? Like just recognizing that whatever value we've delivered to the market to this point, there's more yet to come, and then the needs are evolving. So our ability to kind of keep up with that and maybe keep ahead of it a little bit is really exciting. And certainly, again, as a salesperson, great to be able to bring that message to the market. Okay, so the reason we're here today. Obviously, we have a roadmap that is really exciting. We have some things that are now tangible and we can kind of forecast their releases. And we're here to talk about one of those releases in particular that I think is really exciting and touches on a pain point that has been the reality for a number of our customers. So I'm going to set you up for your introduction here, Ben. But if I were a customer today and I had various teams that may have varying levels of access to different data sources that we're consuming that we want to visualize within Maltego, can I, as an admin, go and manage their access today?
Not easily, no. In reality, you can.
Okay. So as someone who may want to have more control over how my teams are leveraging Maltego, what can we do about it, Ben?
Well, funny you ask. So we talked about the V3 transforms last time. That's really looking at capabilities of what users can do with the tool. This particular suite of updates coming out next is really kind of starting a train focused on administrators. We've known for a long time that it's hard to manage Maltego with large user bases. The thing I hear most frequently is I'd really love to not have a spreadsheet full of license keys. That's going to be your client license key as well as various API keys for different data sources. That's what we're addressing here. The next launch here is Maltego ID. And really the idea is a single unified login that accesses all of Maltego's capability. This starts on the simple end. The initial release is going to be focused on Windows CE. It tells you how old I am. Yeah, it's going to start on the Maltego CE, the Community Edition users. They already log in with a username and password versus a license key. So it's not going to be a big change. It's going to be pretty transparent. But under the hood is a whole different set of capabilities. We know from talking to many customers that large organizations, including Maltego, to be frank, really do look for single sign-on capability, federated authentication, multi-factor authentication. These are all table stakes at this point. We have to have all these things. So this is the first step in that direction. The first release focuses purely on the CE community users. It's going to offer them, right out of the gate, it's going to offer them multi-factor authentication, and it's going to replace their old Maltego account with a new Maltego ID account, which will have, some interesting power. So it'll let them work with our Spark training platform and pretty much any other browser-based technology that's going to come along. Administrators will love this because they're going to have, a portal where they can manage, they can add users, they can assign allocations, and entitlements. They can configure, what a user can do, what data sets they have access to. All of those things are built right in. When we get out to, say, enterprise customers, and sometimes law enforcement and government organizations have compliance requirements where we really need to have auditing and accounting capabilities. It's not going to be in this first CE release, but those will become possible as part of this, all tied into a centralized user management system that it's going to allow enterprise admins to really connect in and manage what's going on in a way that's appropriate for their environment.
So obviously that is extremely exciting news, I'm sure, for a lot of the folks that are listening to this, and certainly for myself, knowing that we can kind of bring this message to our customers and to our prospects as well. But so I heard you mention Community Edition a couple of times. So this first release is going to be geared towards that. When can we anticipate, or what are some of the big differentiations maybe between the Community Edition release and what we should expect for enterprise customers?
Yeah, so community release is really slated for Q4 23.
Okay.
My program managers would come in here and wrap something around my neck if I quoted a date right now. But yeah, it's coming up November timeframe. Later on in that quarter, we're going to have pieces available for enterprise customers to try. On-prem is later, so on-prem will be probably 2024. There are extra considerations to think about versus the cloud environment. How do we support it? How do we make sure it's updated properly? Things like that. We've got to really think through that. Though I will say, everything we're doing right now is architected to function either in the cloud or on-prem. Public release, enterprise. This is going to be pro as well. That's going to be sometime in the 24 timeframe. We'll communicate it well in advance of this, and this is something that's not going to impact current users unless they want this capability. This is really, your license keys are going to continue to work. This is really an option to step into. Although we hope and expect that you're really going to have quite a lot of opportunities to use the power and capability of Maltego ID for other Maltego services pretty quickly. So we've got other things in the pipeline that we're not going to talk about today that are equally exciting, that are accessed via Maltego ID.
Okay, that's awesome. I know that we have maybe some, just kind of visually reinforce some of what we're talking about here, kind of a list of some of the different kind of capabilities and everything that's included in this, specifications that are included in Maltego ID. Can we share that before maybe going into the demo, just so that folks can get a sense as to maybe what they can expect to see?
There we go. Cool. Yeah, so I mean, again, think of Maltego ID as a unified login. It's really important to know that, out of the gate, not for CE, but for enterprise users, we'll have the capability for SAML integration. So if you've already got a single sign-on capability, the account you use for everything else within your organization will be what allocates your license and entitlements in Maltego. So that one account will continue to do everything for you. Whatever security capabilities that come along with that account, however multi-factor is accomplished, be that, YubiKey, SMS, whatever, hopefully something like TOTP, that's all, built into the platform. We're going to accept the authentication from your single sign-on provider and map that to your account. So, in that case, in that scenario, we have no idea what your password is. We link it to the username that's accepted, and off we go. It's intended to really allow seamless transitions from, throughout multiple products. Like I said, we've got the Spark learning system that will be connected in here, and we've got some other really cool stuff that we'll talk about in future webinars that will really make this pop. The account management is kind of the key piece for administrators. The ability to invite users to Maltego, you'll be able to see right in the interface, how many licenses you have, who they're assigned to, move them around. Same thing with the different transform entitlements that you purchase through Maltego. That'll all be in one place. We'll show you in the demo in a minute how that kind of settles out. This also includes roles. So, you can establish a user as the administrator. You can also establish, financial admins who might be, maybe in the future will be able to order products right there in the portal, and as well as like a management admin, things like that. Yeah, I think that's the list.
That's awesome. Well, I know people are probably excited to see this in action. So maybe without further ado, we can slide into the demo portion here, which I know we recorded ahead of time.
Yeah, I will say this is pre-recorded in an offsite studio, and that this is on a demo instance. So, an internal development instance. So not everything you see here is available, as part of the CE release, but this should give you an idea of the capabilities that are out there.
Let's take a quick look at the admin panel. So we'll go to the web page, we'll log in, and then we're going to select an organization. So I'm going to select one of my test orgs, and we'll appear at the main overview page. Here we can download copies of the Maltego client, we can access documentation, support, things like that. Over on the left, we have the main menu. If we switch over to training, we would go to Spark powered by Maltego. We'll look at users here. So here are the users in my organization. You can see they each have roles, member being the most basic. We have technical admin, organizational admin, and financial admin for various management tasks. Each user can have some set of products associated with them. In this case, I've got a desktop license and a person of interest bundle. If we expand details, we can manage an individual user, assuming we have the appropriate permissions. You can see the number of seats remaining and when the particular entitlement expires. Now, when we update, we see the new entitlements. In the product view, we can see all the entitlements related to our account, and we can add them to specific users. So we now see 2 users assigned out of 15 for Desktop Enterprise. Let's go look at the billing section. So we see an invoice, we can download it, we can see the status, things like that. And we can also view specific subscriptions associated with this account. I don't have permissions to edit. Over in settings, you're able to configure things like contact IDs and billing information. And you'll eventually be able to tie it to a payment card to enable small transactions in the web shop. Of course, we have a dark mode, because everybody loves dark mode. And from here we log out. So that's a quick overview of Maltego ID and the admin panel.
Awesome.
I'm going to turn that off.
Well, I can say 2 things jumped out at me. The first is that for anyone who has attended, again, kind of Black Hat or any subsequent events, The interface is somewhat familiar. Is this kind of maybe just like a foreshadowing of kind of things to come as far as how we are envisioning how our customers are going to start interacting and engaging with Maltego products?
I think it's a pretty safe bet to say that, you know, the ability to leverage Maltego products from a wide array of browser-based tools is going to grow over time. I think we've got some interesting things coming out here relatively soon, and we've got some long-term strategy that will really become apparent soon.
That's fair. So one of the things for me certainly is, you know, when we're at a booth, we have some people who are very familiar with, and others that have never seen us before. For new customers that are seeing this interface, and again, you know, any subsequent releases perhaps that are leveraging any kind of a similar modeling, are you hearing that the appetite for ease of engagement, lowering the threshold and lowering the bar for being able to kind of extrapolate some value from Maltego, is that part of what's helping to inform some of the way that we're releasing these products and designing the interface and kind of considering our roadmap in general?
Yeah, it's definitely in our thought process. As you know, Justin, through large portion of my recent career, you know, lowering the "you must be at least this tall to use this product" bar has been a big part of that. This is no exception. You know, moving towards browser-based capabilities and adapting in such a way that, you know, less experienced users can get the same value out of the tools is important. We hear a lot about, you know, shortage of cyber talent or cyber hiring. There are a couple of different ways to look at that. You know, getting people a tool they can use very early in their cyber career that really, you know, turns them into a power user rapidly and enables them to close cases and close incidents and resolve those problems, you know, fits right into what Maltego is trying to do.
Yeah, you know, you touched on something that we hadn't really discussed in preparation for today's webinar, but I'm wondering if I can throw something at you here, a little ad hoc. But one of the biggest narratives that I'm hearing quite a bit, I just most recently attended the GSX conference in Dallas, Texas, and one of the messages that I heard a lot from vendors is the blurring of the lines between various teams and departments, in part because the digital footprint of all of these organizations and, you know, agencies that are leveraging Maltego, they're blurring, right? And we're starting to see different teams and functions having to work together and pull from data sets that are used to be kind of siloed within one particular team or department. Maltego is really uniquely positioned to address that. Are you finding that you're hearing more and more of that message of this desire to not just centralize how I engage with cybersecurity data, but data across my entire enterprise? And is that helping to inform the roadmap as we continue to add capabilities and think about, you know, how users engage with our platform in general?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have two main focuses when we're looking at the data. One of them is, you know, kind of external sources. What kinds of new data and new capability can we make available through that data? The other one is, you know, enterprises have vast arrays of data that they need to make sense of, you know, much in the same way someone would perform an investigation in Maltego. So how do we map that data in a way that is useful and effective within Maltego? So yeah, we're definitely working on, you know, a number of projects around kind of those themes of getting different types of data, you know, mapped into what a user can have on their palette and on their screen. The need for link analysis and the need to find connections, you know, really doesn't stop when you're focused on internal data. You know, in fact, we just recently published I find it a fascinating use case paper where a game vendor is using Maltego to track fraud in game. So they've got all the data about all of the transactions in their entire database, which is kind of a unique situation. Usually when you're tracking fraud, you've only got one perspective worth of data. In this case, they've got the entire set of every transaction that's ever taken place that they can walk through. They don't need any external data. Everything they need is right there, but they're doing the, you know, following the same procedural investigatory steps to come to a conclusion. They're just doing it essentially in a game. So it really kind of shows that this technique, this capability can work anywhere. It's just getting the data plumbed in.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And, something that we've heard, I've been hearing quite a bit is this ability to kind of leverage Maltego for use cases that are not, again, siloed into pure cybersecurity or threat intelligence or person of interest, right? That there's a number of different ways that being able to just visualize internal data is such a kind of critical part of that. Um, one thing that you touched on that I guess I want to kind of bring up again before we maybe dive into some of the additional questions that people may have, but when we talk about the roadmap and how we're prioritizing certain, releases and capabilities ahead of others, we have an entire separate function that is focused on the actual integrations, right? Like which data partners are working with us and those capabilities. And that roadmap is its own kind of fascinating and really interesting kind of story as well. How closely aligned are you with the team that are also working on some of those kind of external integrations? How much of the roadmap is in consideration of some of the kind of emerging trends and things that we're seeing from even the integrations team and some of the folks that are bringing data partners onto the platform?
I spend a lot of time talking with folks at various events and conferences. Usually, many of those people are, integrators or data providers, and through that, I spend quite a bit of time making connections there with our integrations team, and really, getting a conversation started about, how would we make transforms in Maltego. That's every time I come back from a conference, we do 3 or 4 of those.
Yeah,
Good thing.
that's great. So my last question maybe is in terms of like, how do customers bring this feedback to Maltego, right? I guess, part of my thinking here is that so much of our roadmap gets informed by what we hear back from the market, from
Yep.
our community edition users all the way up through large enterprises and non-users as well, right? Just understanding trends and emerging, trends within the industry. How do they bring that feedback to Maltego?
At the end of the day, we'll take it any way we can get it. If you want to, send it scrawled on the back of, a nice flat screen TV, we'll take it. But we'll also happily accept email to our support team. We're on all the relevant social media. We're happy to take it any way we can get it. If you've got a sales relationship with us, our account executives are happy to communicate that back. And, our product managers spend a lot of time poring over that feedback and mapping it into where we're going and what we're doing. A lot of our roadmap is driven based on, directly on that feedback. I would say quite a bit of it comes from, I've been a Maltego user for around 15 years, so I have a pretty good idea what we need.
Mhm.
That being said, we go to great lengths to kind of validate and prioritize things based on user need, and we're happy to take any feedback we can get.
That's awesome. And I'll reiterate from the kind of sales perspective, we have resources like our customer success team, customer engineering, our account executive team. They're all part of a broader account management function. And the whole idea is to make sure that you are not just a customer, because you purchase from us, but that there's an ongoing and evolving relationship that allows you to share feedback around capabilities that are relevant, things that you'd like to see, things that you don't need to see. That all gets back. I mean, Ben hears from me at least once or twice a week about a customer who shared some feedback or wants to schedule a call and just, hear from the horse's mouth a little about what's in the future. How do we prioritize certain new capabilities that might really help them to solve a relevant or compelling problem? So those are all things that are absolutely on the table for our customers and for, again, non-customers as well, to come and engage with us and make sure that you're sharing that feedback. Happy to bring that, to the appropriate stakeholders here within Maltego for sure.
Let me throw one more at you, which is, within the product and tech org over here, we do have a UX research team, and they
Yeah.
absolutely love to sit down and talk with users. We do a number of studies looking at, particular capabilities within the tool, how to best represent that, how to make that easy to understand and intuitive, how to make it efficient for the user. They'd love to hear about that. If you're interested in something like that, reach out to our customer success team, and they should be able to get you in touch.
That's great. Okay, awesome. I see a question that came up here from a member of our audience here. So the question is related to V3. People are
Mhm.
curious about some of the technical documentation related to V3 so that they can
Yep.
write some of the graph in, graph out transforms themselves.
Yeah, so that's in development right now. So we're using the toolkit internally and using that as part of building out the items in the Transform Hub, just to kind of make sure that our SDK, so to speak, is accurately documented and useful. So stay tuned. We're working on getting to the point where we can get that rolled out and getting that into broader hands. Integration partners should reach out to our data integrations team. We can start different conversations there.
Okay, awesome. Well, Ben, look, I hope that the audience today and anyone who's listening after the fact to the recording is as excited as we are, certainly on the front lines, being able to bring this message to the market. The roadmap looks very bright for us. Appreciate all the work that you and the team are putting in. And certainly just know that as we get feedback, we'll be sharing it. For anyone who's listening today or again in the future, please feel free. There's an open line of communication here. We welcome the conversation and the feedback and the collaboration with our community. So thanks so much. And Ben, again, really appreciate all the work that you and your team are putting in.
Yeah, thank you, Justin. Great chat as always.
All right, we'll talk again soon.